I sold the last one in 2018, and I said, right, I am now going full time into Bitcoin. I'm going to do talking about this big Bitcoin, which I misread as Britcoin, which wasn't a great start, and didn't really understand it. So I googled it when I got home, because I don't think I had a smartphone at the time. And discovered that this was a terrible thing, and economists were saying it was awful, and I shouldn't be involved with it, shouldn't touch it. So, and Paul Krugman, Peter, all these names came up because my background's economics. So I looked up, what do we economists think of Bitcoin, which is that was a very expensive mistake, because I then didn't touch it on their advice. I'm very happy with where I am now, and I always feel that I could be doing more, and I really want to do as much as I can to keep building this in the same way as we did with the internet in the 90s.
Welcome, Jason Deane, to the Larpar Show, where we talk about what is money, what is coming, and how to protect your family. Jason is wildly passionate about Bitcoin, especially the education and adoption end of it. He's been involved in Bitcoin mining and renewable energy. He's a well-known advocate in the industry, regularly appearing as a speaker across the circuit and on TV and radios. He's been on Bloomberg, the Telegraph, the Financial Times, CNBC, and the BBC, and many more. He has direct and practical experience of Bitcoin mining, having mined consistently since 2017, I think, to present. Extensive hands-on experience of designing and modeling mining solutions across the globe, including sourcing and pricing. He's currently advising some large-scale mining projects. So, Jason, how did you find Bitcoin, and how has it changed your life?
Well, good morning, Lawrence. Yeah, I mean, as you can hear, it has changed my life, right? Because all of those things you mentioned, would have seemed alien to, Jason 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's completely changed everything. So I tell you what, I'll take you back, right? So 2013 is when I first heard about Bitcoin. And weirdly, that was in a newspaper in the days when we used to get newspapers. One of those free newspapers you get on trains. And I think I was coming back from Reading to where I live, and there was a free paper, and I read it. I was a bit bored, and it was talking about this thing called Bitcoin, which I misread as Britcoin, which wasn't a great start, and didn't really understand it. So I googled it when I got home, because I don't think I had a smartphone at the time, and discovered that this was a terrible thing, and economists were saying it was awful, and I shouldn't be involved with it, shouldn't touch it. So, and Paul Krugman, Peter, all these names came up because my background's economics. So I looked up, what do we economists think of Bitcoin, which is that was a very expensive mistake, because I then didn't touch it on their advice for 3 years, but it kept poking me, and eventually in 2016 I thought, I'll have another look at this, see if I can understand it. I didn't know anyone who was involved with Bitcoin. I couldn't really find anyone to talk to, so I was still relying on stuff on the internet. But I found some positive articles and some people who were quite passionate about it. Remember Andreas Antonopoulos, who found a couple of his speeches, and I thought it was very compelling. So I did eventually buy my first bit of Bitcoin. I think there's only a couple $100, I think, at the time. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, I have to say, but I bought some. I remember actually apologizing to my other half, and I said, look, I'm sorry it's taken me so long. I know we're really late into the game, but I've just finally bought some Bitcoin. And of course that's a thing, isn't it? Because everyone thinks they're late. Everyone thinks they're late.
Everybody thinks they're late.
Yeah, or you've paid too much. That's the other thing. You're too late, you pay too much. And of course, it takes a while to learn that's not the case. But at the time, that's what I felt like. But then, I've kind of got this obsessive personality, I suppose, in some ways. If I get my teeth into something, then I can't stop, and I just became obsessed learning about it on a ridiculous scale, bought all the books, watched all the videos, and I thought, right, I'm convinced. So of course I told all my friends and family about it, who were less convinced, shall we say. And but even so, I carried on down this path, and by sort of 2017, I was seriously into it. And then I think I did something similar to you, actually, Lawrence, because I still had some businesses at the time, actually a chain of internet cafes and game zones, and which we were using for mining, funny enough. And I sold the last one in 2018, and I said, right, I am now going full time into Bitcoin. I'm going to do Bitcoin. No idea what that meant. I just knew that I had to be involved with it somehow, because it felt the same as the internet in the 90s. I've been involved with education adoption of the internet in the 90s, and it felt the same. It was the same passion, the same excitement, same objections, interestingly. So it made me feel I was in my 20s again. So from that point on, then it was, wrote a couple of books and just started getting involved and talking to people, and that led to one thing, then another thing, and then Bitcoin pioneers, and then Bitcoin racing, and then mining on a bigger scale, and it just snowballs, doesn't it, once you really put yourself out there. So yeah, that's a long answer, but the bottom line is it's made a huge change from where I was, and I'm very happy with where I am now, and I always feel that I could be doing more, and I really want to do as much as I can to keep building this in the same way as we did the internet in the 90s.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something, once you do probably 30 or 40 hours of work on Bitcoin, and you get that little bit of an aha moment, and then you go on to your 100 hours and the light bulb comes on, then,
Yeah.
most people don't really go back.
I don't know anyone
They
who's
just
gone
keep on
back.
going forward.
You can't unsee it. That's the thing. Once you pass that point, I don't even think it's possible to go back, because it's like this conversations you have with people until they understand the money system. And most of us don't. Let's be honest, we have no idea what's going on. We just know it's just money stuff. But once you understand how that works, you think, this is terrifying. I've got to get out of this system.
Yeah.
But you can't explain that, in 5 minutes. And if you do try and do it in 5 minutes, you look like a nutter.
Yeah.
So ask me how I know.
Well, it's happened to us all, hasn't it?
Yeah.
With all our friends and even families around us, they still think that we are at the casino, we're gambling or something. But we're actually not. All we're doing is we figured out the monetary system. We figured out that the money's broken, and we're protecting our families and ourselves. And we're trying to educate people and show them a better way. But Bitcoin comes to everybody when they put in the time.
It is true, but do you know what? This analogy, and I've written a couple of articles on this, between the internet is amazingly accurate, because I was working at Microsoft at the time. This was early to mid 90s, and just as the internet was really going. And of course, as a young man, I was hyper excited about this, and I was going to people say, "Oh, you can connect your computer, and you can talk to other computers, and you can see stuff." And they really thought I was crazy, because they couldn't understand why you connect your computer to anything except a printer. Couldn't see any use for it at all. It just had no use as far as they were concerned. And it was probably illegal anyway. The government were going to shut it down. And we were enabling terrorists to communicate, and we were enabling people to steal stuff. I mean, off the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, how much of that sounds like the same objections we get now when you talk to people about Bitcoin? It's exactly the same. It's a paradigm shift, and that takes time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think because we've been so conditioned to listen to so much centralized things, everything around us, when you actually fully understand the difference between centralized, what we live in, the system that we live in, compared to decentralized.
Yeah.
It's so hard for people to shift and get their minds out of that and be thinking different. It's a mindset shift as well. Definitely.
And the great thing is, to say, we've all experienced the same thing. I mean, we all had to discover, we all have to go through the journey. So you can be very empathetic to the people who are going through and have the same questions. So it's much more of a hand-holding exercise than a kind of pushing exercise. And I think, I made that mistake. I think a lot of Bitcoiners do early on, because you're just overexcited. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah, yeah.
slow and steady wins the day in this one.
Yeah, yeah. So just tell us a little bit about your mining experiences and what you've been doing in mining, and then we can talk about, I see the El Salvador flag behind you and a Bitcoin racing jacket. We can go into that a little bit as well. And then maybe the film that you're talking about as well. So
Ah, yes. Oh, well, there's loads of stuff. Well, let's start with the mining side, because I've always loved the idea. Since I discovered it was called mining, I just conjured up this wonderful image of digging through stuff and finding things, which is kind of digitally what you are doing. But I love this idea that you could set something up, support the network, so you're walking the walk as well as talking the talk. So you're actively involved. That's important for me. But also, I love this idea that there'd be this constant stream of sats coming in, and I just thought that's so cool. I mean, also it saves me having to think about DCA and all that kind of stuff. I don't need to worry about any of that now. Dollar cost average, I should mention. It just comes in. So I started on a very small scale, and I mentioned I had these internet cafes. And what we did was we set it up so that if the computer wasn't being used, it would start mining. Now we'd already passed the days of CPU and GPU mining for Bitcoin, so that I was too late for that. But we could mine other things and sell it to or exchange it, or sell the hash to NiceHash, or mine Monero and sell that. So we did what we could with the assets that we had. And then I realized I wanted to do more, so I built a rig with a colleague of mine, a Big Blue we called it, which was a 12 card 1080 Ti rig, and hired some offices in Reading that had power included. And we put that, and literally just a tiny little office. Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were very pedantic, and we were very open. We didn't try and pull the wool over everyone. I just said, look, we got these. They didn't know what mining was or Bitcoin, so we just said, look, they've got these powerful computers processing all the time. Is it okay? I said, yeah, no problem. So tiny little office, and we just put this machine in the office, and that was it. Just left it running, controlled it remotely. And after about a month,
nobody else there, just a mad noise coming out.
Just, and it was very hot because they wouldn't let us open any of the windows or ventilate, so we had to have the aircon on full power, which was ridiculous. I mean, it was just crazy. So after about a month, they said, "Oh, you seem to be using a lot of power. would you mind going, please?" So we had to leave with our tail between our legs. But at the same time, I realized, look, it's got to be ASICs. That's the specialist computers to mine. So I then stumbled across a chap called Max Metroneski, a Russian chap who was setting up a project with miners. I started getting involved with him through Siberian Mine, and basically really became their first customer, and we sort of worked together ever since. Just scaled up from there in terms of my own miner operation. That is still running. In fact, I'm still adding to it and building to it, because you have to update from time to time. But that led me then to really get into it and advise on various projects. And what I'm doing now is all about putting miners in where there's excess or wasted or curtailed power. So I'm loving it. I mean, it's so exciting, the things that you can do in this. Renewable energy and mining are just coming together all the time, and I think there's real potential there for the next decade, certainly.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah. But things are changing as well, aren't they? Have you seen things change from when you were doing your mining to now? It's gone a lot more corporate now as well, isn't it? Not really
Yeah,
big, like...
I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, because it did feel a bit sort of Wild Westy and underground and somehow naughty, which is actually how the internet felt in the early days as well, because it was just a crazy place. But in some ways, the internet's the same. It's very corporate driven now, if you think about it. But there is still room to sort of be yourself in many ways. And actually, mining has gone very much the same way. So you're right. They're very large corporations, public listed companies with these amazing looking facilities. Like, they really are a state of the art. I find them quite sexy. I think there's something wrong with me, but I think
what type of facilities have you been to? Like some mining facilities, where have you been? What have you seen?
I've been to a few. The obviously Siberian was based in Russia, so obviously before the war was my last visit there, just before the war actually.
Hmm.
And actually I posted a video on YouTube doing a tour of that facility. But that's an air-cooled facility. I've only been to small so far, liquid cooled facilities. So I haven't done anything on a large scale there, which I would like to, and that's kind of the next project. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing here in the UK, or we hope to deploy here in the UK, is probably going to be air cooled anyway. So we don't need to worry about that too much. But I still want to go and see them and play with them.
Yeah. And touching on that a little bit regarding the UK, how's the UK? Is there, I know you have there's an organization in the UK that tries to talk to the government and stuff like that. What's it called again? Is it
Well,
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin Policy UK, that's one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Those guys, yeah.
There are a few little groups around in BP UK. I mean, I got a lot of time for those guys. So, shout out to Freddie New and Susie Violet One. I mean, they spend a lot of time, with the ear of some quite senior people trying to help shape Bitcoin policy in the UK, and it is uphill struggle
Yeah.
as you can imagine. Um, so those guys are really working on that a lot of the time. I dip in and help when I can, but they speak the language. They're much better at me than
Hmm.
speaking to these guys. So I'll let them carry on. But in terms of mining here in the UK, obviously we aren't on the global hash map,
Yeah,
because you can't mine in front of the meter here because it's just, you're just throwing your money away. You just can't
yeah.
do it unless you really want to support and pay for supporting the network. But we do have this enormous amount of wasted energy here in the UK. I mean, it's I think the number the last time was nearly
People
a
don't
billion
understand
pounds.
that. People
Oh
don't
no,
understand that about the amount of wastage of energy
I
that's
know.
being wasted every year in every country. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's not just UK. You're absolutely right. Obviously, this is a global problem, and that's all to do with the transition to green power. Because you think about our grids built years ago were designed for these kind of stable, centralized power sources. So your coal, your gas, your nuclear, all that kind of stuff. So easily, controllable, easy to balance. Then suddenly you put in thousands of new so it's like decentralization, if you like, of energy. So thousands of new sites with power that output that varies constantly.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
fluctuating, goes up and down, up and down. If
Crazy.
the wind isn't blowing, it's not good. If the sun's not
Yep.
there, there's no power. So how do
And,
you
and the other way around. So
gauge that?
suddenly you end up with enormous amounts of power. So you've got giant wind turbines producing all this power, and you've got one tiny little cable that's connecting it to where it needs to go. Can't take the power. So we end up with these called curtailments, so these grid constraints, and we end up paying the operators. I'll say it was nearly £1 billion just in the UK last year to not produce the power we've just paid them to build in the first place. So I mean, it's just bizarre. That goes
Yeah,
on our bills, by the way. We pay that
yeah.
through our electricity bills. So
Doesn't
we
make
think,
sense.
look, it doesn't make sense. Why not
But a
put a
lot of
nose
things
there?
that policymakers do don't make sense. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's the whole thing. So I
it's
think
money, money.
Bitcoiners now have had enough, and we're just taking things in for ourselves. We don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah,
We
that's
just
it.
verify everything ourselves.
Yeah, well, we can certainly verify that because that is real, and I think it's crazy. But hopefully, we'll over, the next few years. I mean, this is many years of projects here. We'll ultimately get a change in thinking for that. So, but we're some way off yet, but we're up for the challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah. Very good, very good. And then tell us about I see the El Salvador flag there behind you. Tell us a little bit about that. How,
Yeah, well,
what's all that about?
well, I mean, obviously, as a Bitcoin, I had to go to El Salvador, right? So, and check it out. Have you been up there, Lawrence?
I haven't, no, but I want to go.
Oh,
It's on our
yeah,
bucket list. We're gonna try and go there this year, but not. But so I'd say next year. There's a few
yeah.
people on the ground that I know over there, so we're gonna definitely go and meet
Oh,
them.
I think there'll
And
be quite a few people on the ground there, Lawrence. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, we've got the what's the conference called there? I think is it Adopting Bitcoin in
adopting Bitcoin, yeah,
yeah,
adopting
that's
Bitcoin in San Salvador.
usually November time. But yeah, I went out there actually with the Bitcoin racing team. Um,
Okay,
because we actually went to meet some quite senior representatives of the government there in terms of, you know, seeking either a little bit of sponsorship or permission to use the El Salvador flag on the top of the cars, which we did do, and we started that via the ambassador in the UK. And she set it up for us, and we went out there. I tell you what, it's quite a thing to arrive, because we were treated as VIPs, as guests of the government, right? So even coming off the plane, there's someone waiting to take you through the private area. You've got these big rooms to relax in while they sort out your paperwork, bring you a coffee. It's a bit like when you've traveled first class, and that's been a bit of a treat, and then you have to go back to economy again. You think, oh, I don't really like it. So it's kind of the same impact, really. And we got to meet, you know, they took us around everywhere. I saw the power plant, I saw the mining operation out there. Got to stay on top of the you know, the volcanic vents where the power's coming from.
So explain to us. I know the no, so is this the hydro plant that they recently done? Was it that they recently
This
opened?
was the one at Berlin. So this is the
Berlin, okay.
volcanic thermal energy. Yeah. So I mean, it's a really cool place to see. And they had at the time, because going back a couple of years, just a fairly small mining operation. They had just one container. I understand since it's expanded.
So did you meet Charlie down there? Did you, Charlie Stevens?
Charlie? No, I didn't meet Charlie.
He's in Berlin. He is.
Oh, okay.
He's based in Berlin. Yeah, he's Irish.
Yeah,
Irish lad.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, we met a lot of the guys there, but my Spanish is pretty awful, so we ended up just sort of shouting each other in our voices, and smiling and laughing and nodding a lot. So, but luckily it was for some guys who could speak both.
So is that where they're mining themselves? Is this, you know, they've been talking about mining from the volcano? So it's actually, okay. So it's actually.
Yeah. I think they've got more operations now. They're fairly secretive about it, actually.
Okay.
So, in fairness, recently I haven't spent much time finding out what the latest is. But yeah, that was a great trip. I actually went back a second time as well, and I love it there. I mean, people do rave about it, and it's unusual to rave about a country, particularly somewhere which just wasn't even on our radars even a few years ago. And I have to say, I can't, you know, there's a reason why it became as popular as he is. Those people really do, you know, appreciate him. And the hope in people's eyes is really quite moving. So they've obviously been through a hell of a time. They've got a hell of an opportunity ahead. And Bitcoin, of course, is making a difference. It's slower than people think, but it's making a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And like what he's done in the last couple of years, just there, the crime rate has gone down. Is it safe? Like, yeah, you know,
incredibly safe, incredibly safe. Yeah, I mean, I took my family to LA just before I went to El Salvador.
I can imagine that was like,
we were terrified in LA for most of it. It was awful, and we don't ever really want to go back there. But that was in total contrast to anywhere I've seen in El Salvador. And, you know, I was really worried about it. I still had that mindset, dangerous place. Got there, and if you look at the numbers, you know, danger, 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 it literally falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
And it's as safe as you can possibly imagine. So amazing experience. Highly recommend it, Lawrence. Let us know when you come.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be over there sometime sooner rather than later.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. So tell us a little about the racing as well. Bitcoin racing. I know you were involved in it more before, not so much now.
Yeah, I'm fairly quiet with it this year because I went totally overboard last year. But I mean, lovely guys, the Mackenzie family and their sons, Charlie and Chris. You know, they've been racing. Andrew, the father, he'd been racing for years and actually racing the touring car championships. And they're all Bitcoiners, and they got their own story, which is worth seeking out, by the way, because they have told their story on various chats. And we just, I was running a project called Bitcoin Pioneers, helping people get started. They said, "Oh, there's some crossover here," so I started chatting with them, and I thought, "Oh, this is cool." You know, we've got all these little cars, and they were only little cars, but it was still a professional championship with all the FIA rules and equipment, all that kind of stuff. And they said, "Oh, you know, if you want, you can actually race. I mean, you know, it costs a few bob, but we can get you a car, and you basically hire this car for the
Right.
season. You're responsible for it. But we'll take care of all the mechanics, all that kind of stuff. But you have to get all the kit and get the training, because you have to get a license. Didn't even know you had to get a racing license. You have to do a racing driving test with mine at Brands Hatch, and then you can enter and run. So I thought, well, how hard can it be? I mean, it's just driving quickly, isn't it? So anyway, so I learned fairly quickly. It's not quite like that. There is
No,
quite a
it's
lot more
not.
involved.
If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
I
That's why
think so.
if it was easy
Yeah.
with Bitcoin, everybody'd be doing it.
I suppose. Well, it's getting easier, right? It's a bit like,
Yeah, it is.
UX is getting easier. But anyway, so I got, like, and of course, at first I was pretty awful. I was always last. But part of that was the psychology of us being way too sort of polite. Someone was trying to get past, I'd be like, oh, you can go past.
Yeah.
It was only when I had some more training and did some go-karting, it kind of penny dropped. It's like, oh, okay, so you just
Have to be more aggressive.
yeah. So I can't help it. I'm British. I'm like in a queue, and I'll just say, excuse me. It's like, no, none of that. We want, just pile in, and that changed everything then, because after that, I was just, be a gap this wide. I said, yeah, I'll get through there, no problem, and pile through, and what have you. And I had a brilliant time. Also had a big smash, an Anglesey destroyed the car, and actually someone else's. But got a new car and finished the season. I think I was 25th out of 51, so it's not bad for a rookie year, and someone who was 52 at the time and hadn't raced before. So, and I'll tell you what, I've got the bug now. I'm definitely going to be back at some point.
Yeah, very good, very good. That's a bit of fun anyway, isn't it? Yeah. I'll definitely have to talk to them guys there, actually. Yeah, nice to share their story as well.
Guys. They're good guys. Yeah, and really interesting story as well.
Yeah. Very good, very good. And then let's talk a little bit about this film that you're talking about, yeah? Renewable, yeah?
Well, Renewable, we're presenting it,
Okay.
but of course the film is Dirty Coin, which I'm sure most people are aware of now. And this was put together by Alana Mediavilla. I think I don't know if it's Mediavilla or Mediavilla. I've never called her Alana. Probably should check it at some point. But she sort of got this film funded, and mainly through Bitcoins. I think it was through Geyser Fund, actually. She said, I'm going to go out and tell the story of what Bitcoin mining, the difference it's making sort of on the ground, particularly in places like Africa and stuff like that, where the on the ground impact is phenomenal. I won't sort of give away too much, but it's really changed people's lives for the better, and that's all been enabled by Bitcoin mining. But of course, the kind of mainstream narrative is still very much, it's very bad, and all the oceans and all evil, and it's pointless anyway. The list goes on, right?
Yeah.
So she got some funding to go and do this move, which I think took about a year to do, and now finally it's been released, or it's now available. I think it won an award at the Warsaw event. So the kind of the premieres are sort of starting to happen now. It will be shown at Nashville. I assume it's been shown at Prague. That would make sense. But there are no scheduled showings yet here in the UK. So we thought, well, with what we do at Renewable, which is taking this excess power and turning it into something useful and having a positive effect, it makes sense for us to produce this. And we, to be honest, we're going to do it at a loss because we subsidize the tickets, but we just felt it was important to get as many Bitcoiners as possible, even non-Bitcoiners, to understand the difference this is making. So spoke to Alana, and we agreed some terms, and we hired this cinema in South Hill Park Arts Centre in Bracknell in Berkshire, which is a really beautiful sort of mansion building. It's been converted into this giant art centre. It's a big theatre. It's really quite famous, been around a long time. But they've got this really sort of quite old-fashioned cinema. It's even got like a big fireplace and a picture over the fireplace and stuff like that. It's just a 60-seater, really beautiful cinema. So I thought, what a great place to show it. So we hired that. And that is available for everyone to attend on the 1st of July. So it's the very first show. It's the UK premiere of Dirty Coin on the 1st of July. Now, there are only 60 seats. So by the time this goes out, there may not be any tickets left, but it is worth checking. I think we're almost about, I think, close to halfway sold out now. So but
Nice.
you know, it's
We'll
going to
put
be
a
a
link in the
Bitcoin
description. We'll put a
yeah,
link in the
do it.
description. Yeah, people can
I
scroll
mean, it's a
straight
little
through.
far from you, Loris. I think that'd be a hell of a trip. That'd be a hell of a night out, wouldn't it? Just
Yeah.
to come over to Bracknell. But hopefully, you know, you'll get to see it sooner or later
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
great. And actually, the trailer on the Eventbrite link, there's a trailer as well, shows you what it's all about. So it's
Brilliant.
worth checking out. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it on the day. So yeah, great work, Alana. We're pleased to support you.
That's amazing. Amazing. I'd like to talk a little about maybe the ETFs and maybe CBDCs. Yeah, because
Oh yeah. Anything with
uh,
acronyms will do, right? So,
yeah.
yeah.
So talk to us about the ETFs. We're seeing a lot of inflows coming in with the ETFs, but everybody's still wondering about the price. Yeah, like we're not really worried about it. It's
No.
crypto summer at the moment. We're just chilling out. You know, I mean, nothing really happens for a month or two after the halving anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sometimes up to 3 months, but then it's gonna just take off like a rocket, probably. If you look
Yeah.
back, you know.
Well,
So
that's
what's
what the charts historically say. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
yeah. So what's your take on these ETFs and what's going on at the moment? And is there some sort of manipulation going on because there's so much being bought and the supply and the demand and but the price ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I was just looking at this morning. Basically, we haven't moved really for about 3 months now, price wise, which I'd be honest, I'm a little surprised about. But you know, it's a very stable. I mean, someone keeps seeing the term sort of bull crab market. Because we're just going sideways with the time. Look, I wrote quite a few articles on the ETFs on my Medium and the Bitcoin blog, which you know you can also check those out as well. And if you follow me on Twitter, by the way, I post free links to all these articles all the time, so it bypasses the paywall. So you can always follow me there and get these articles free of charge anyway. And you know, we were talking about them coming along. We were talking about the possible impacts. There was a lot of talk with the price going down straight away, which I didn't agree with. But ultimately, we've seen this huge inflow, right? And then we got very excited because of the English kind of pseudo ETFs, although they are actually physically backed, so they basically are ETFs. And then we've got Monochrome, of course, launched in Australia, and of course we've got Hong Kong, and of course we've got visibility of all of these flows. I don't know if you follow sort of Hey Apollo or anything like that, but they give the sort of daily flows of most of the stuff that's going on. And obviously,
I'm going to share my screen here. I do quite follow it, and we can just see this is like from Bitcoin Strategy platform.
Okay, yeah, that's another good place. Yeah.
You can see here the volume of what. Now, yesterday they sold a bit.
Yeah,
Probably sold
so
the
about
most
3,500.
yesterday.
I think,
3,500 yesterday, yeah. But the volume that they're buying, like, you know what I mean? Oh, like last week, the amount that they bought last week, I think it was, I calculated, it was about 26,000.
Could be. I can't
That was
remember the
bought
numbers, but you might be
approximately about
right.
26,000. Yeah, nearly 2
Yeah,
billion was spent
yeah,
yesterday on last week on Bitcoin.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only 450-day mined, as we know, right? So the demand in general terms, if outstream supply, and of course we know that Monochrome is adding a few a day. The Hong Kong ETFs haven't really done anything; they're just sitting there. In fact, I think they've got
Yeah.
slightly less capital than when they started. And the English ones haven't really done anything yet. They're only available to institutions anyway. And then you've got people like, you know, Michael Saylor who's just announced he's buying more. And then you've got sort of El Salvador, they're still buying one a day. So you've got all these constant demands coming through. So I keep seeing all these conversations about, oh, it must be manipulated. It's probably paper Bitcoin. Well, look, it's not going to be paper Bitcoin, right? Not an ETF. You know, these guys will cut any corners they can. We know that. But there are certain things they're not going to get away with, and one of those would be, in this case, coming up with a paper ETF. It's just not. They're not going to be able to hold that, and if they did, there'd be serious trouble. So I don't think that's anything to do with it. I can't really explain it. It just feels like it's reached a kind of equilibrium. There is don't forget, still plenty of Bitcoin on exchanges. I know the number has gone down, but you know, if you want Bitcoin, you can get it. It's not an issue. And until that becomes an issue, then you know, price is not going to move, you know, parabolically, I don't think. But we are clearly heading that way. All the data shows up going that way on exchanges, inflows, generally speaking, and activity awareness. You know, whereas in 2017 it was all retail driven. I mean, we're all going mental, you know, over this, you know, searching and buying stuff. This time around, no one in retail is really paying that much attention. This time, the institutions
The tsunami's coming. This is tsunami that's coming now. Like, people don't understand what's about to happen here.
Yeah, so retail will catch up again when it becomes of interest, but right now it's the institution. And we know most of these guys are gearing up in some way or still assessing or still setting up sales channels. So, you know, we haven't started on that point. So, you know, you're absolutely right. We sit and chill anyway because we know what we're doing. It's great the institutions here, I think, because, you know, it really legitimizes it and makes it very difficult now for governments to do anything, particularly in the US, where as soon as there's money involved, right?
Yeah. Well,
the money's working for you.
The truth be known, there's probably loads of policymakers that are in Bitcoin now as well, and they're not really saying much. You know what I mean? So why are they going to cut off their own access to Bitcoin?
Yeah,
you know?
but that's the great thing. Even the traditional bankers who, you know, are just still fascinated by the dollar and still believe in the dollar, they now have got a lovely revenue stream and a beautiful sales channel with commissions and fees. So it's like, well, hey, I don't care about Bitcoin, but I've got this. I can get these dollars. Eventually, they'll put two and two together and realize that dollars are devaluing faster than Bitcoin's appreciating. That might take them a while because, again, this mindset thing, right? So, so that will take a while. So, look, it's going to take it's going to take a while, I think, for that move to happen. But I think we can be fairly confident it will, unless something, you know, cataclysmic happens. So I think that's the case.
I seen data last year. No, in 2022 we're in 2024 now. At the end of 2022, that the Bitcoin is being adopted 3 times faster than the internet was in the early days. So with that number, right, by the end of 2026, there's going to be 1 billion people looking at 21 million units. It's not even 21 million units because there's about 1.5 million units on the exchanges at the moment, in around at 1.5, 1.6. So imagine that, like 1,000 million looking at 1.5 million.
And again, I mean, I'll go back to that comparison a lot at the beginning of the internet, and now, and I have seen that same data. They're different; they do vary slightly, but it is, you know, generally speaking, a faster rate than the internet adoption. And you know, working at Microsoft at that time, we used to talk about the internet is doubling in size every month because it was at that stage, and that's an incredible statistic because of the rate of that growth. But that was at a very specific period. You wouldn't say that now, of course. You know, we have yet to see that parabolic growth, and I think that data you've just mentioned kind of points to that as well, maybe more subtly, but it's the same concept. There will be, you know, this sudden move to it.
Yeah, but like when you think about the internet, as people found out about it, they had access to it. You know what I mean? But this is different. You know what I mean? This is like a fixed supply. There's more coming to get jammed into that fixed supply. So like, it's only maths.
Well, that's economics 101, right?
It's not that hard maths to figure out.
It isn't, but again, you know, it's the same thing. I wrote an article on this actually saying, you know, Bitcoin actually will never run out because it's just, you know, it's just a question of what price you acquire it. Someone will always sell you the Bitcoin. So it just depends if you can make a good enough offer for that Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, we've got some crazy times ahead for sure. But you know, the other thing is, again, it's so many analogies with the internet. It's become a theme now of this. But you remember the early days, you know, using the dial-up and what have you. I mean, the UX was terrible and the experience was terrible. It was awful. It was only complete nutters like me who said, no, it's going to be great. And not just me, it was thousands of us. So, you know, all these things you'll be able to, one day you might be able to download a movie. You know, we never thought that things like Uber and Airbnb, but, you know, a movie would have been really cool, right?
Yeah.
And it was awful. But
And,
now
and,
it's
and, like
peaceful.
how that
Yeah.
started, the first one that launched, and where we are from now. I mean,
Yeah.
what are we on iPhone 15 now or something like that? Is
Yeah.
it
Was it about 2007, wasn't it, for iPhone? Something like that. Somewhere around there.
something like that? Yeah,
Yeah. Someone will correct us if we're wrong, I'm sure.
yeah, unbelievable. Like, yeah, I mean, how
Yeah, but it's the
fast
same
it's
with
grown.
Bitcoin, right? So, the early stage of buying Bitcoin was fiddly. I bottled it early on because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how it works, but it's still got a long way to go, but it's a hell of a lot easier than it was. And even using it now, will we have UXs over the top where you wouldn't even see the addresses and it'll be done in some other way or some encrypted email address kind of system. I know people are working on these systems. And that will take time to work out and adopt and understand because hardcore Bitcoiners perhaps will say, well, now I've got to trust another layer. So I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm happy with that. I'll probably stick, but we'll always have the base chain anyway. So
yeah,
you
we'll
can
always have the
adopt
base
as
chain.
much as you
Yeah,
like. So you
yeah,
can do it however you want.
yeah. And then, so let's go into what's coming, okay?
Okay.
Because I like to see, like, a lot of Bitcoiners can actually see, well, what's coming. Yeah. So we've been talking about, I've been talking to people about CBDCs now for over a year, but maybe a year and a half. Yeah. It's getting closer and closer and closer. Some people still think that it's, well, most people that don't know what's going on probably think it's going to be another 10 or 20 years that we have fiat currency still, or cash. Yeah. What's your take on it that you're seeing? Yeah.
Well, that's a very broad question, Ross. No, in terms of fear, I I think before COVID, when you first understand what's happening in the money system, you think, okay, so we understand that the lifespan of fiat now is limited, right? That's the natural function of fiat currency, right? And I thought, well, maybe, it might be something my kids will have to worry about in the future. That was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, everything changed, didn't it? I mean, we saw, stupid amounts of money printing, lots of economic policies, and other things have happened that make it clear that that demise is now much quicker than any of us previously thought. And actually, mathematically, it starts to get unsustainable. We're probably at the beginning of that curve, where it's already mathematically unsustainable. So that just becomes a question of time. And that timescale, I think, now has dropped considerably. It definitely will be in my lifetime. And probably I could even be within the next decade or even less. Depends, where this comes out. But the end is in sight. So we can see that. So it's going to have to be some kind of transitional process, regardless of Bitcoin, because the fiat system is not going to sustain. So it just so happens Bitcoin's come along. So people like you and I, we're fairly relaxed about it because we have a lifeboat, and then it becomes your responsibility to help other people get on the lifeboat, right? But most of them don't want to get on the lifeboat yet because it doesn't hurt enough yet.
Yeah.
But eventually, we'll be overwhelmed. Hopefully, it won't sink. No, it won't in this case. So I think there will be a transitional period. I think fiat will coexist in some form with Bitcoin for some considerable time. And the route beyond that, I can't quite work out whether it will be a Bitcoin-based fiat system or not really a fiat system, but some kind of Bitcoin-based currency system, or Bitcoin itself, which is how I prefer to think. But there are possibilities, and we don't have enough yet on there. Just know it's going to be messy in the next 10 years, and there will be a transition of some sort. I think we can be pretty sure about that.
Yeah.
CBDCs are evil, as we know. I don't need to tell you that. And we have seen some countries play with this. And one that always springs to mind, obviously, is China's digital system, which they're tying with social credit systems and what have you. I mean, that is, that's pure Black Mirror stuff going on there. And, there's no reason why that couldn't happen here ultimately. People will only see the convenience of it. They'll understand, probably for a long time, how dangerous it is. But funny enough, I don't know about you, Lawrence, but
Explain a little bit about the CBDCs, how it's a different form of money. I mean, how it's programmable money. Yeah, because a
yeah,
lot of people,
yeah, I suppose so. So I took that as read, Lawrence.
some people might just automatically, just for new people that aren't
Yeah,
aware.
fair enough. Yeah, I kind of went off on one without kind of setting the scene there. So central bank digital currency. So imagine your pound, which is kind of digital anyway, because we don't really use cash. We just use, our cards and the numbers on the screen, right? So the whole thing is made up. But they've got this replaced by kind of new digital representation of that, right? So that pound now can be tracked kind of at its molecular level, I guess. But it can also be reprogrammed at its molecular level remotely by the people who control that currency, which is the central bank / government / powers that be. So that gives some advantages. So, you could pay someone's benefits directly based on data they've submitted. There are things that you can do along those lines, but you can also control where and when that money is spent. So you could say to someone, right, you're only allowed to spend this money that we've given you for this, this, and this. And even then, some people might think that's a good thing. Benefits is a good example of this. We'll pay your benefits. You can only spend on food, rent, and power bills, that kind of stuff. It will only activate for those payments that you try and make. If you try and spend it on gambling, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone here in that category, I'm just saying anything which is not deemed suitable, it won't work. And some people might say, well, it's kind of a good thing still, because you're ensuring the money's going to how it's intended. But then, of course, this can be completely taken the other way, because let's say
if there's a change of government or something, so everything might be okay now, but maybe in 3 years' time or 4 years' time, when there's a change, there's a switch.
Yeah, exactly. Everything starts off with, well, not always with the best intentions, but with at least some good idea behind it, and it gets completely destroyed over time. But let's say you said something, on social media, which the government didn't agree with, and said, right, well, we're going to not allow you to make any payments for 48 hours. Let's say cigarettes are illegal now. You can't use your money to buy them. Okay, some people might accept that, but they might say, well, okay, we think red meat's better for you, so we're going to ban steak. You can't buy it with money. So you start getting to all these programmable things. And as soon as you start understanding this, I've just given a bunch of examples there, but they're limitless examples of how that could be applied negatively. And every penny you spend is tracked. So it's great. If you're sitting in the government seat, it's marvelous. That's the holy grail, right? You want to know the money flow of the economy for good and bad reasons, and you want to be able to control it for tax revenues and various other reasons. And if you'll be able to control that money, then you don't have freedom of money. That's the cost, right? So is that cost worth it? Well, I think you and I have got an answer for that. And of course, Bitcoin is the absolute opposite of that, which is why governments are unhappy that it's here. I mean, I'm generalizing, but are unhappy that it's here, because this is uncontrollable. And it doesn't matter what governments do, you cannot stop it or stop people using. And governments have tried, and no one's got anywhere close.
Yeah, well, if China couldn't stop it, and the hash rate was up so high, and the hash rate is still fairly high in China already.
Yeah,
and I'm after hearing there on Monday, I think early during the week, that they're thinking about reversing now their ban on Bitcoin in China.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that ban was slightly more nuanced than people think, because it was really about the power source of that. But, you don't mess with the Chinese authorities, because those guys got no sense of humor. They will come and do you in quite a pleasant way, because it is effectively a totalitarian state. So you don't want to mess with those guys. But yeah, we saw that hash rate, that's the power produced by the Bitcoin network from miners, drop right off. It was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it?
It was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
So it crept up as they moved to Kazakhstan and Texas in particular.
But it just shows how fluid Bitcoin mining is as well. You know what I mean? You can just lift the containers, lift the whole infrastructure, and bring it somewhere else. It's not like they have to build this huge infrastructure of big, massive things.
You can do on any scale. I mean, the public committees now do have these enormous facilities that we talked about earlier. But you can move. But actually, even when China were really actively mining, they used to migrate. I don't know if you know this, but during the winter, at the rainy season, they would move operations down to hydro.
Okay.
Sometimes hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, just pick up the whole operation, dump it in the hydro, because much cheaper power. That was about 6 months a year, whatever it is, can't remember the period. And then at the end, they move it back, and run straight off, usually coal, unfortunately, because they've got massive coal reserves. So that wasn't so good. But that's, that's how, and how efficient the Chinese are when they get their mind into something, right? It's just like, today we're going to move this whole operation here, done in a few days.
Yeah. No, it's totally, people need to be aware of what's coming, you know what I mean?
Well, this is it. I
Regarding
mean,
fiat and even even what's coming in the next couple of years when they release all these robotics and the AI and the machine learning, that's going to be massive as well, the change that's coming, you know what I mean?
it is, and
So
I'm not qualified really to comment on any of that because it's not my area. I mean, I keep an eye on it, and of course, I come up with all the dystopian nightmares that everyone else does, because I can see a lot of problems, but I can't. That's not something I can actively contribute to because I'm just not. I'm not focused on that area, but I am certainly aware, and everyone should be aware of it. But there are things that we can be aware of, and CBDCs is a message we should get out, and having proper frameworks in countries for Bitcoin. And I know there's crypto's kind of linked to it. I don't get involved with any of that, but there should be a framework anyway to give that people, because part of that's a question of freedom. So working with BP UK and there's Stand with Crypto and these other guys, all trying really fundamentally to do the same thing, which is get the ear of the government to create these frameworks and ultimately make it as hard as possible for governments to introduce CBDCs, because we do not want those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but they'll try and push them through, and the people that do want them for their own agenda or whatever. And
well, it comes down, can you trust your government? I mean, that's the question should be answered.
Ask yourself that. Yeah.
If the answer is genuinely yes, you crack on, mate.
Yeah, crack on, sign up. There you go.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't think many of us would be answering that question positively.
Yeah. And have you seen anything? There's been an election announced in the UK? Has any talks about any MPs or talking about Bitcoin? Because the way in America it's after flipping over completely, literally in a few days, the way what's after happening over there, and the way they launched the other ETFs as well, and we won't get too much into that, but Bitcoin is getting political now.
No,
crypto is getting political.
Yeah, it's got very political. We can't touch anything Trump says anyway, but of course people will jump on that, which is, I don't know what's more terrifying there. But anyway, let's leave them to it, because they're even more of a crazier place than we are at the moment in terms of what's going on. So elections July 4th, so it's not far away. Reasonably quiet so far, just generally, I have to say. I haven't seen any particular stances being picked up by on Twitter massively all the time. I haven't seen anything really come through. I know again that BP UK are asking people to write to MPs to consider Bitcoin as part of their manifesto and to provide a clear way forward. And I encourage everyone to do that. But we haven't seen a particular stance on this that is specific. There's been some vagueness, but vagueness, I mean, politicians can say something specifically, they do the opposite. So you give them something vague, we're not going to buy that anymore. So I think the short answer is not really, unless there's something you've spotted, Lawrence, that I haven't seen.
No, I haven't really seen that, because it is very close now, isn't it? Like it's on the 4th of July, like you know what I mean, or 6th of July, whatever date's going to be on. It's just 14th of June today, so it's not far away. You know what I mean, man? I think if some of them maybe start doing a little bit of homework on it, there is a lot of people in the UK that are into crypto and Bitcoin and all this. You know what I mean? But they need to learn about it as well for their own sake, because they're probably all misinformed as well.
And then one of the strategies really is to get to the staffers, because these guys are very, very busy, and we like to criticize them a lot, and most of them are not helpful, but there are some people who are generally helpful, but the staffers are hardworking guys, and they'll do the research and brief them, so they're kind of the gatekeepers, and that's a good way to reach these people.
Okay. Great. So just to wrap it up, because I like to keep these about an hour long. Yeah.
Well, how's it been now?
Uh,
That's incredible. That went
yeah.
quick. I
So
feel
have
like
you,
we should be in a pub with a Guinness somewhere, Lawrence. So it
we
just
will
feels like
be, we will be
we
sometime.
could
We'll meet
keep
up
going for
sometime.
hours, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so anything else you'd like to say about Bitcoin and why people should be learning about it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a very broad question, and I could go off on a number of different tangents there. But look,
But just for your
my
family, for yourself, not even talk about
yeah,
corporations or anything like that, because people should be learning about this for
absolutely.
themselves
This
as
is
a
a
saving
personal.
technology anyway.
It's a personal responsibility. Absolutely is a personal responsibility. And even, it's like I talk about my family because there's a few sort of people in my family who have bought Bitcoin and follow it, not as into it as I am, but they do follow it and they do get more. And a couple have even got a couple of friends really have been started doing sort of small scale mining as well, which is great to see. But I do say to people, look, it's fine, but at some point you're really going to have to learn about it. And I use that internet analogy again because it is in the 90s the same. I'm never going to use the internet. I'm going, I think probably will at some point.
Mm.
And it's now the same with Bitcoin. I said, look, still got a little bit of time. But at some stage, you're really going to have to learn about it just for your own personal protection, if nothing else. So that approach I've kind of just I've switched to, I suppose, over the last couple of years, and never back to this hand holding rather than pushing, because that's how much it was in the first day. Try and sell it as far as you can, but now it's like you have to learn at some point. Here's some good places to go. Here's a book. I mean, my book is called "How to Explain Bitcoin to Your Mum," which I wrote for my mum,
Right.
and it did quite well actually. But actually, it's out of date now because I wrote that in 18. So all the
Right.
examples
Okay. Long time
just
ago. Right.
just terrible. But I am working on the second edition now, and I do hope to have that out towards the end of the year. But that is designed to handhold you through in a kind of light-hearted way what's going on. And things like that I think are great. Anything which tells a story is great. Anything gives a specific scenario. Because Bitcoin, you need touch points. I expect you did, I expect everyone did. You don't get it straight away. And that's the other thing, is to reassure people that it's okay not to get it straight away. Just be aware when you're ready, do a little bit more, do a little bit more, do a little bit more, and ask me anything, because I'm always going to be here to answer the questions.
Yeah.
It's a bit
Yeah.
vague, isn't it? But I think I've answered
No,
it.
brilliant. No, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, have you got a website or a
Yeah, I
Twitter or
use
anything like that?
Twitter most of the time, and obviously, just go. So that's Jason Deane on Twitter. You should be able to find me quite easily there.
Oh, it's in the thing there.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's my DMs are open, but I publish my email address, and people can always get in touch. That's jasondeane@msn.com. That's just my original Microsoft one from '96, I think it was. So you can still use that. Obviously, you can check out what Renewblocks is doing at renewblocks.com. And we're actually in a raise at the moment as well, so you check that out, see if that's something that's up your street. And of course, don't forget, come to the movie on 1st of July. So
Yeah.
we'll be having a fun Bitcoin meetup, probably a few beers, inevitable. So if you can make it, come there. But I always say to people, if you've got a question, just ask. I'll always answer. Right.
Thanks for your time. Yeah. We'll talk soon. Yeah.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It really has. And hopefully we'll meet up soon, and Bitcoin Island next year, right?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Catch you later. Bye.